Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to discuss the memoir, fictional memoir by Jim Carrey, Memoirs and Misinformation. So this book came out earlier this year and I remember hearing about it and being so excited because Jim Carrey is basically the principal iconic figure of my childhood. I truly cannot imagine my childhood without Jim Carrey in it. Not just because of Ace Ventura and The Grinch and kind of the funny family films we think of, but also because I was allowed to watch Dumb and Dumber pretty much as soon as it came out. I remember my family, my brother and I, and my dad renting the movie and watching it at home, and I'm pretty sure I've seen that movie 1,000 times. I mean, there was a point in my childhood where I could recite every line from the movie before it came on in the movie. And, to this day, if I see the New Line Cinema opening, I will think of Dumb and Dumber because of that New Line Cinema being burned into my brain. So I've definitely followed him throughout my life. He can be kind of a interesting person to follow because a lot of his other movies, his more dramatic and maybe they could be considered indie movies, didn't always line up with where I was in life, a little bit obscure. But at the end of the day, I think at the core of just who I thought of Jim Carrey and what he meant to me, he could pretty much do no wrong. Even when he did wrong, like even if I didn't enjoy the movie, I was like, he's still a genius, Yeah. So I was really excited when this book came out, and immediately, the title drew me in, Memoirs and Misinformation, because, I work in data and information. That's what I deal with every day. And I think, this title, he probably chose such a title as well because we are living in the misinformation age. He probably wanted to seize up on a moment there. But heading into it, I think the important thing for anyone who's interested in reading this book, if you look it up right now in Goodreads, and I'm sure Amazon is similar, it does not have glowing reviews. This book is not landing for a lot of people. And so I felt compelled to make this video because I think there's some missing context with this video and with this book, I should say. And I will link my Goodreads review below. But I think the important thing for anyone wanting to read this book is you really have to catch up with present day Jim Carrey. I think if somebody is browsing Barnes and Noble, let's say a husband and his wife, like, hey, honey, look, Ace Ventura put out a book, and he hasn't read anything in a while, hasn't followed Jim Carrey's career. That is not the way to approach this book. And first of all, let's just say I am not an expert in how to approach this book, but I'm just providing my take on how to prepare for this book. And so, the first thing I will say you should do, if you haven't, is look up the commencement speech that Jim Carrey gave a couple years ago. I will link it below. But that commencement speech took place in a small university in Iowa, my home state. So kudos to that. And it really is truly inspirational. It is a thesis on being present and being willing to embrace who you are as a person. He talks a lot about his childhood and being inspired by the struggles that his dad went through and the lessons he learned at an early age that life doesn't always work out. You can fail at what you don't want, so you might as well go for what you want. And that book, or not book, I'm getting confused, the commencement speech really lays out kind of, it's almost showing the vulnerable side that you otherwise wouldn't get to see, the man behind the curtain. You see who Jim Carrey is underneath everything, to a certain degree. Obviously, one is always putting on a public face when they're in public, but it really lets you see who he is as a person and where his mindset is at, in a very inspiring way. And I think that it should be required viewing for anyone, but that's definitely where I would initially start before endeavoring in this book. The second thing that I will say you should check out is the special on Netflix called Jim and Andy. And that is a documentary that follows Jim Carrey's experience playing Andy Kaufman in the movie Man on the Moon. And basically, they had filmed this footage, the behind the scenes of the movie, and it had been locked away in an archive somewhere for forever because it was such a gripping experience. Jim Carrey had gone full bore into method acting that the studio and producers were actually afraid of the footage getting out and that people would not like Jim Carrey after they saw the footage. But within that, there's many interviews with present day Jim Carrey, and he talks a lot about his mindset once again. And he discusses the idea when you're famous, especially when you are as iconic as Jim Carrey, and the perception people have of you. They see you on the street and they don't really see you for who you are. They see the mask. They see Ace Ventura. They see Lloyd Christmas. They don't see Jim Carrey. First of all, how could they? They don't know Jim Carrey. But also they have this expectation, kind of a dance monkey dance sort of attitude when you meet somebody that you admire their work, when they're playing fictional people. And with that in mind, you could tell in a way, and I will link that video link as well to Netflix, but you can tell that Jim Carrey is almost haunted by his own celebrity. You can see a discomfort there that kind of explains why he tends to slide into the shadows every now and then, and he's not always front and center, and he doesn't really seem to completely enjoy fame all that much. I mean, he hasn't become a total recluse, but you can tell he's thankful for where he's at, and he's grateful for everything he was able to accomplish. He got what he dreamed for, but that, something's kind of missing there. And the reason I say you should watch these two things, the commencement speech and the Netflix documentary, is because when you go in with that frame of mind on where Jim Carrey's psyche is present day, and you understand where he's coming from, this book makes a lot more sense. There's a lot in here where Jim Carrey is referencing old characters. It's autobiographical, but there's fictionalized elements, and it's basically one big caricature of Jim Carrey. And it makes you wonder if he did that out of a fear of being vulnerable, or if he did that knowing that, in a weird way, when people come to a celebrity memoir, they're kind of expecting that celebrity image, like I mentioned. They're expecting Lloyd Christmas, Ace Ventura. And I think it was part mixture on his part, I can't speak for him, of wanting to give that audience what they actually want. Like he said, that they don't really technically want the true him, but then maybe in a way to blow it up a bit in the reader's face and kind of overwhelm the reader with the amount of caricature, but in a humorous way. And it's very different than anything you're ever going to read. And so I struggle to really, truly do this book justice. But I think a lot of readers are going into this book without that context and maybe don't even know that it's supposed to be partially fictionalized and are probably wondering why Jim Carrey went so eccentric in this book. And I think if you have the context of those other sources, I think you really begin to figure out why he would approach a book this way. And I will say the other factor that makes this so good is he had the help of Dana Vachon. I believe I'm saying that correctly. Dana Vachon. And I assume that the prose and the writing is in a large part due to him, because it is phenomenally written. I mean, some people have felt that this was too nonsensical, but even in its nonsensical elements, it is genius. It is so well written that it's a treat in itself just because of the way it's written. So there's a lot of things in here, and I don't really want to spoil anything. I don't really want to go too deep. I mean, if you're nervous about it, I definitely say, maybe go grab a library copy if you're nervous about whether this is going to work for you and whether you will like it. But just go into it with the right mindset and take a moment to really get to know who Jim Carrey is today and set that foundation for why he may have approached the book the way that he did. So with that, I don't have a lot else to say about the book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and I am definitely in the minority for giving it 5 out of 5 stars. But I truly think that if you really go into it trying to understand who Jim Carrey is and where he's at right now, I think you will see this through a whole different lens. So pick this book up, give it a chance, especially if you enjoy Jim Carrey, because it's interesting, it's a treat, it's creative, and it's unlike anything else that you will have ever read.